Hey everybody, my name is Jay, and this is I Have a Samurai. And today I'm going to be going over a match that I had at the most recent Xanadu Monthly. I'm being playing against Yoshimitsu, and I am the Amy on the right. This is in losers final, so it's going to be a 3 out of 5. And I was hoping to try and find somebody who could help me out with doing a little bit of analysis on this match, but I wasn't really able to find a Soul Calibur player. So instead, I was able to find the best Grand Blue player that I know. Everybody, welcome Boom.
Hello, friends. Yes, I am the best Grand Blue player ever. Well, for now.
The best Grand Blue player I know, at the very
Yeah,
least.
which pretty much ever, right?
Yeah, yeah, I would feel confident saying that
Yeah.
for sure.
So.
So this was, like I said, the losers finals. You had lost to Woes, and I had lost to you. So we
Mm,
had played once before, and then we also played casuals before the tournament had started.
yep.
The casuals, I remember going a little bit back and forth, but at the same time, who can really tell who is going all out in casual sets before a tournament? In terms of what the first tournament set was like, I really remember it not being particularly close. I remember it being I was a little bit too antsy to get certain kills. I was not playing. I wasn't really playing all that solidly, dropping some punishes, and just feeling a little bit lost, especially when you were on top of me. How did you feel about the initial tournament set?
Right. I think the first tournament set was interesting because I felt like you had just like it was after a break, right? Like we had to stop playing,
Yeah.
waiting for top eight to start,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like you were a little bit slow to kind of
A
get
little bit
started.
cold, yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I remember exactly at the end of that match, the last one was 2-2, and I had a wall combo, and the wall combo dropped, and then you dropped
Yeah, yeah,
something,
yeah.
and then it was just like super jank. But like I felt like if you had won the round, you would have won the set because of just momentum and just like becoming uncold in a sense.
Maybe,
Um,
yeah, it's possible. Yeah,
but it
no,
was definitely
I,
weird.
I
Yeah.
I remember it well now because it was, yeah, it was a classic Amy situation where I just dropped out of a combo for no reason, and then I don't remember which low I blocked, but there was a low that I had blocked, tried to do while rising KA as my punish, and only the K came out,
Yep. I
and the
remember
A
that.
didn't come out, and I was just kind of standing there.
Yeah.
But that being said, what I should have done and what I'm probably going to be talking about once the match happens is that these lows that I'm blocking from Yoshimitsu really shouldn't be punished by Wall Rising KA. I have much better punishes for that sort of thing.
Yep.
So, as far as I know, you believe that Yoshi actually. Well, I don't know if you would say wins this matchup, but handles it fine at the very least, and it's at least 5-5.
Yes, I think so. I think because when Amy gets Red Rose, the game plan doesn't really change for Yoshimitsu. Like
Mm-hmm.
Yoshimitsu always struggles in neutral as far as like other characters go, and Amy's not really a character that keeps out. She just kind of like
Right.
makes you right after her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially when it comes to this matchup, you're making me chase you, but I have longer range, right?
Yeah.
So even though I'm chasing you, I can still kind of like be at that range where I can kind of like keep it like a mid range kind of a ordeal,
Mm-hmm.
and you're kind of like forced to use certain options into where like if you whiff, I kind of like 4KB you, and okay, now I'm in your face with like Yoshi having rare standing frame advantage, right? Or I do something maybe like a 6A plus B, and it's like okay, I got a knockdown, right?
Right.
I definitely don't think it's I don't think Yoshi wins anymore. I definitely don't think it's Amy favor. I think it's like probably one of the more even
Right.
matches in the game.
What had changed your mind? Uh, because I really feel like talking about this long, maybe like during Summer Jam or something like that, where Amy had been out for just a handful of months, and I feel like I remember you saying that Yoshi actually won this matchup against
Mhm.
Amy. Am I lying? Am I misremembering?
No, you're remembering correctly. I
Mm-hmm.
think just the meta developed,
Okay.
just the matchup just developed and changed. I think
Mm-hmm.
earlier on, Yoshi kind of came up with his AA, 3K kind of just like play standard, like Yoshi says, get away from me kind of game plan. But then, Amy players got better. Amy players just figured out how to like optimize roses and stuff like that. So the matchup just changed and it just caught up with
Yeah.
the character.
In terms of how I always looked at this matchup, I viewed Yoshi along with a category of a handful of other characters that would include people like Taki, X, Sophie, Cass, where the idea is that when I don't have Red Rose, I'm very nervous because it's kind of a tough situation to deal with until I have it. And then once I do have Red Rose, then it immediately becomes, at least for me, where I no longer feel forced to chase you. Now I feel like, assuming that I have at least a little bit of a life lead, I can have you start running into 4 AAs, and I can have you start running into 2-2Bs and stuff like that. And so couple that with the fact that I can now win out in damage in the neutral. That tends to be the way that I try to play the matchup, at least a little bit. So, yeah, go ahead.
That makes sense. I think yeah, that makes sense. I think ironically, both these characters kind of do the same thing as far as like trying to enforce mix-ups on mental frame advantage.
Yeah, thematically, yeah.
Yeah, they just do it different ways. I think Amy covers herself with the parries and stuff, especially the way that you play Amy. It's more like, here's the parries. Like, if you can't attack, but you have to guess right, right? And
Yeah.
so it kind of puts fear into the eyes of the opponent, where Yoshi's kind of like, okay, well, can I get you to stop mashing? Yes or no? Okay, what can I do with that? That's kind of Yoshi's game plan, pretty much in almost every matchup, actually. But I definitely do think these characters kind of operate in that mental frame advantage kind of category.
Yeah, it's funny. I never really thought of it that way. I wonder why. Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, because I was like, I'll talk about it later when we're playing, but it felt like I had to like, it's like a war of attrition of like, do you really think that you have frame advantage in this kind of situation? That kind of
Yeah,
that mindset.
it's something that it's a resource that I feel like not a lot of people talk about. When people talk about resources in fighting games, you think about your life total, you think about the meter you have, you think about the stage positioning. But a lot of people don't necessarily think about stamina of mental attention.
Right.
In terms of a resource, and it is a finite resource for anybody. Some people can have more of it than others, and it's not necessarily going to be pronounced on the screen so easily. But everybody can only, we're not robots, we can only pay attention to so many things at a time. And if one is able to force somebody to think about something specific to such a crazy degree, they're gonna start falling out on other things. If I am able to force my opponent into thinking about mix-ups all the time, where they always feel like they're on the back foot, they're not necessarily going to be prepared for situations where, like, I screw up, or the stage becomes a little bit wonky or pressure-filled, or there's a punish or a GI they could have done and they don't end up doing it, and, their entire game plan just kind of unravels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
Mm-hmm. So with this stage, spoiler alert to anybody who hasn't seen it, neither of us changed the stage. In terms of the reason why I never changed the stage is because this is a pretty neutral stage. It had a little bit of ring out situations, but it could be a lot worse. It had a little bit of wall situation, but it could be a lot worse. It wasn't gigantic. I wanted something at least a little bit small. This is kind of like in the middle ground, but yeah, I just felt that it was a really neutral stage, so I didn't see any reason to change. What about you?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I really didn't care about the stage at this point. It was a good stage. I could like cheese you if you got to the edge.
Yeah.
I could also cheese you if I got you to the wall. And it is a lot of space, and I know that sometimes I want Amy to chase me.
Mm-hmm.
So especially in this stage where it's like you can chase me, but eventually there's a ring edge to my back, or there's a wall to my back, where if I 2-2B you might just lose all of your life. So like to me, it was just like it was a good stage for me. I could have like fished for like maybe like a smaller stage, but then I have to worry about Amy being my face all the time, or I could have fished for like the raft stage. But even then, I think the size of the stage is really kind of annoying in this matchup. So I definitely was fine with the stage.
Yeah, that's kind of how I've felt as well, in the sense of there are definitely much better stages that I could have gotten here, but there's also a quite a good amount that I could have gotten a lot worse, and the matchup becomes significantly more of a headache. But yeah, so again, this is going to be losers finals, best 3 out of 5, and let's get into it. So there's going to be a little bit of back and forth from like the previous games that we had that may not necessarily be displayed on screen.
Right.
So you definitely see, this is one thing that always catches me against Yoshimitsu. So that was definitely, that 2B was definitely planned. I definitely didn't mean to do 2-2B. So whenever it seems like there are so many situations in this set, in the set that I had with you before this, and against Yoshimitsu players in general, where I just always think that they're going to go low. I just always think
Yeah.
that it's going to be a low parry. And so many of my low parries were just stuffed during this set. And I think to myself, like, man, I just went to a second level of Yomi for no reason. I could have just been doing mid parries like I want to.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I don't even think it was the second level of Yomi. To me, it's like you went low, and it's like, wow, I didn't even do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, okay, yeah, I did 1K you, but like that low is not really going to kill you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's like, oh, he went low. Okay, he like obviously, you talked about preying on passive information before, but for me, it's like, like the other lows that I don't understand why you would want to parry a low there instead of like blocking the low there. Like I guess for you don't want to get launched, but it feels like the same thing happens. At least if you duck low, it's a bit different kind of information you're giving. Because like if you're ducking, that's a little bit more frantic. But to me, if you're parrying, that's more confident, right?
Yeah. So in this
but
kind of a situation, what I'm chiefly thinking, what with the fact that we just started the game and I have no roses, there's virtually nothing that would make me duck low, because what I want to do is either be correct about a parry, or I think that you're going to do something slower and then I'm going to mash. Those are the two options that I'm thinking about. And so ducking really isn't in my, especially blocking, is really not in my repertoire. And the more that you deal with AV players, you're going to see that Amy does not, just the way that she plays leads people to believe that there's really never any reward for blocking or ducking. Her wall rising stuff is not really all that good, and so even if I had blocked a particular low, I'm not even going to get a rose out of it. So I'd rather just go for, it's the beginning of the set. I might as well, if I got that low parry, everybody would have been like, "Ooh," and then
yeah,
you would have
true.
had to think like, "Oh, I'm on top of you. You got to deal with this."
That's very true. That makes sense.
Yeah. That's kind of the idea. So essentially, what I could have done in this situation was after getting hit by the one that's 1K, right?
The 1K the low, yeah.
Yeah, the 1K the low. I could have just done a 3A instead and probably beat out the jump kick.
Mm-hmm.
So then again, the jump kicks and just jumping in general is actually pretty good against Amy. Good against traditional mix-up mid-low type characters because jumping kind of eliminates both.
Right.
This was definitely a situation that we saw all the time. The clash of the grab. Yeah.
I was like, so Yoshi's best Oki is his forward grab, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 6A plus B is actually unrollable. You cannot get up GI, you cannot soul charge, you have to take that mix, right? And it hits grounded, right? So it's something that you have to do, and I think it's 9% guard damage, and it's +5 on block.
Odd numbers, okay.
Yeah, so it used to be +7, which meant that if you did 6A plus B into the Flea B, you would beat Soul Charge. Because if you have those odd number situations, you're able to crush Soul Charge like that. But it's +5, and it's really good. So most time Yoshimitsu players throw you, it's always front throw because they want that 6A plus B force situation.
I don't think I actually knew that before, so I'm going to definitely remember that.
Yeah.
And this was a very typical situation that I remember even coming up during our casual sets, where a very typical thing that Yoshimitsu players do once they go into meditation is to then go for the med K, which is a perfect thing for me to mid parry. You end up delaying it so that so you're baiting out the parry in that situation.
Right. The goal is to kind of get you to be afraid to parry, which is kind of an impossible task, but it's good to know that. It's good to. I want you to know that I know that.
Yeah, exactly. I know that you know that I know, and so on and so forth. It kind of, it's important to at least make me hesitate and put me out of my comfort zone, because in order to beat the delayed med K in that situation, I have to mash.
Right.
I'm mad that I wasn't able to get. Well, that's a very typical 6A plus B kind of setup. So I'm going to go for, so one of the only things that like really truly worries me about Yoshimitsu is the fact that he has an I-10, and so 4BB isn't necessarily as effective as it can be in other matchups, which is fine, because 4BB, when you can't punish it, is really obnoxious. It's very difficult to deal with. The reason why I'm going for 4BB here is because you're right at the ring edge, and I just got red roses, so maybe you're forgetting that I actually have one of the best roll catchers in the entire game.
No, I just didn't want to be near the ring edge.
Yeah, all right.
But your logic makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I just
tough to beat an I2 6BB there.
yeah, I figured you would Emerald spin in.
Hmm.
I figured you'd be greedy with your pay advantage.
Yeah, I decided
But
just with the fact that I only had so very little to do left. This is a mistake that I keep making, is that I can actually mid parry the mid after that low when
right,
you're in soul charge, and even though I ducked it appropriately, I didn't end up doing it. So there's a handful of situations where I can easily mid parry and I don't, which
right.
is bad news. So a lot of like challenging with BBB, which ends up being a little bit scary to me, and I'm kind of
Right.
going through a lot of stuff to see like what your options. What I was lucky, a lot
Yeah.
of your options to see what you're gonna do when I'm in your face, and it seems to be significantly more patient than what I was expecting.
Yeah. And then I got hit by this, and I was like, wow, that did a lot of
Yes,
damage.
yeah. It is important to note that the developers have said in an interview that a Red Rose Soul Charge A plus B, they wanted to do, if you just hit with it raw, they want it to do as much as a CE.
That's
And
insane.
that is the way it is.
I think so there I was like, okay, I felt kind of like defeated because Wilson just like deleted me for 3 straight games. This
Yeah.
was the fourth straight game I lost, and I was like, well, I need to do something. I need to
Hmm.
just like press something. I need to just like be like, hey, this isn't a 1 player game. I'm actually here and I need to play. So I think this match I play a little bit more aggressive.
Hmm. Yeah, this is something that I always talk about, where the person who loses finals, the person who just lost in winners finals versus the person who just came up into losers finals. The latter, the person who just came up into losers finals, has the advantage because
Yes.
I have been winning.
Yep.
I have this momentum that's going, and the other person very much does not. Also, on top of that, I believe that once you get to a certain level, if you have two people, so you beat me in winners, and now
Hmm.
we are fighting each other again in the exact same tournament, I believe in that situation, somebody in my position has the advantage because I lost last time, so I am thinking about that match and I am trying to make adaptations from what I had learned in that match. You won the last match. There's nothing for you to learn. There's nothing to learn when you won something, so you're just going to keep doing the same thing, right? But I'm
Hmm.
specifically going to be, unless you were to overwhelm me with a certain amount of skill to the point where I couldn't adapt to what you were doing, I kind of have an advantage on, in terms of the adaptation.
Right. No, I completely agree. I don't think that there's nothing to learn. I don't think that I agree with the fact that there's nothing to learn. In a win, it's just a lot less.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's 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 less fresh. So like I understand what you're saying, but
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree with you 100%. I think here I just go ahead.
No, yeah, there's a handful of situations where it definitely just feels like I should be ducking against Yoshimitsu pressure a lot more.
It really depends on what Yoshi wants to throw at you. My thing with Yoshi is I want you. So my thing is punish me so I can condition you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think everything you do is able to be manipulated. And depending that jump was on purpose, by the way.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
absolutely.
messed up. Depending on how you punish me and what you're looking for, it gives me so much information. So if you do duck when I do med K, that's fine, because that's information that I think that I feel like I can use to manipulate you later on,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Everything is about manipulation in this kind of stuff.
Right.
So this is definitely something that's very typical with a lot of players who are very much not used to playing against Amy. So AMS grabs recover. If anybody who is watching this played Soul Calibur 5 and remember Patroclus, Amy's AMS grabs recover quicker than regular grabs. And so there's a lot of people who, when they're rolling and then they try to get up, will immediately try to press a button. And I'm like, well, I'm actually not as unsafe on whiff as you might think so. But you end
Right.
up baiting out the parry into a typical GI and then beating me. So I effectively lost 3 times there.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get up and mash at that point because I think you had. I think I lost the last round from you mashing. So I wasn't even thinking about pairing. I was just thinking about not mashing. As in, I go and mash BBB twice because I think that you're. I thought you were frustrated with how that
Yes.
last
Yeah, yeah,
round
yeah.
ended. So I figured that you would try to press your advantage a little bit more.
It was something where I had figured there had been so many situations where after a certain hit you had backstepped, and AMSB has such a great horizontal hitbox that even if you were to start box stepping after you had hit me and you're at frame advantage, the AMSB is still something that at the very least you're going to have to try and block.
Makes
And
sense.
so far, I've been able to keep you blocking once I am in your face, and that's perfectly fine for me. I'm still comfortable with just not necessarily getting a lot of damage, but just like piling on layers of offense, because I
Right.
haven't even really started getting into like the more complicated Amy levels of pressure, because I'm still trying to enforce the idea to you that like, no, yeah, you should keep blocking because you will be rewarded, and then eventually I try to take that away.
Right. I think in this match particularly, well, one, I figured I had your timing,
Hmm.
and two, I think my spacing was a lot better
Yeah.
in the first match, and I was able to kind of dictate. Like there would be times where we would be close up, but I felt like every time we were close up, I was able to kind of dictate the pace. It was on my terms rather than your terms, at least in this
Yeah, I
one.
had a real tough time dealing with. There were plenty of times in both of the sets that we had, and especially as we saw at the end of that last round, where it wasn't necessarily the spacing that was getting to me, it was my patience. I just wasn't as
Mm.
patient as I needed to be. And it's something that I have always struggled as a player to perpetuate in a better way.
Yeah, I get and as a player, I think my biggest strength is understanding how the opponent is feeling. So it just felt like you got the first game the way you did, and then like the tempo changed. You're like, oh, I still want to do the beginning tempo. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
The reason why I backed up is because I was able to finally see what you do after high parry K, which is something that I
Mm.
always try to do when I see somebody playing. And I thought it was very interesting to see that your option was to continue to block and stand still. It's not really something that I see a lot of people do, especially a character that has an I-10. It's very
Mm.
rare that I see somebody actually decide to continue to maintain a defensive posture. They're normally
Mm.
like, okay, well, you know, if assuming my opponent knows the frame situation on high parry K, it's going to be they're going to do an AA, so I'm going to try to tech crouch under it with a 3A. Or I think they're going to think that I'm going to do a 3A, in which case I'm going to sidestep and do a 2-2B to beat your potential BB. So the fact that neither of those options panned out obviously wasn't real any risk to me, but it was interesting to me.
Yeah, I did that because I had just won 2 rounds, and so I had given you a lot of information, and so I figured if I had kept going the way that I was, you would have been able to see something.
Yeah, I
But
guess that's true. Yeah, that makes sense. And you have so much time. Uh,
right.
oh yeah, this is where I couldn't even stop myself from saying like, wow, that was nice.
Yeah, I think well, yeah, because we were talking to each other during the set
Yeah,
at most
which
of the
is
set. I
not
think
something that I normally do, but yeah,
right.
I
I think
couldn't
this
help
is
it.
I think this is interesting because this like I think a lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh, that was so cool," but in reality, it was just like you had done the same thing last round.
Yeah.
Like if you I don't know if you want to go back, but if you look at the end of the second round, you were in the same position. You did the same thing, right? So yeah, right a little bit before this, I think.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah.
you did the same thing, and like you're about to die. Uh, there's no risk for me to do that. I don't think you have to do like a super hard call out to reverse ring me out in that situation,
Sure.
right? So it's like it wasn't as oppressive of a read as it looked. Um, it was just more so just like, oh, he did it last round, so I think he's gonna do it again.
Yeah, it's a very typical kind of situation. Not to mention something that we always keep talking about is that. So let's say you were dead wrong about that.
Mm.
What does it matter really? If you
Yeah,
think about
yeah,
it, you have such a high life lead. You at the very least made me spend a bar. I'm away from you. You have 2 rounds. So there's really not that much of a risk to try and pull something like that off.
right.
So yeah, I tend to at the end of rounds that I lose to try and like take a minute
Hmm.
to assess what the situation is. Not even necessarily a matter of like actively thinking about particular things, but this is just something that I started doing after I had been going to tournaments for a certain amount of time. And it was just because I found that when I would lose, I would think about things that I could have done in the set, like 15 minutes later, and I'll think like,
Mm.
"Ah, why didn't I try to do that?" And it's like I hit rematch too fast. I wasn't actually thinking about anything. I wasn't actually actively trying to adapt to the situation. I didn't take my moment to relax. So that's why I always end up like taking a beat
That
to
makes sense.
rethink about stuff.
That
This
makes
is
sense.
definitely when I started getting frustrated that I just never really felt like I had an opportunity to do what I wanted to.
Yeah, I think so. The reason why I did Full Cars 3K, I think I did Delayed Dragonfly K and Full Cars 3K and 3B Full Cars 3K is because I
Mhm.
was like, I think you're frustrated because like offline's different environment and that just whiffed for some reason. Offline's different
Well, yeah,
environment, but
it is important to note that that is very much a common thing for 1B to whiff in that situation. 1B just simply does not have the hitboxes to hit somebody when I am at their side, and it's just something that I never register in time for that kind of thing. So, it's the cost of having an unseeable low that gives you a combo and a knockdown and
yeah,
all
that
that
makes
kind of
sense.
stuff. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I figured you were very like the crowd was behind me at that point. Everyone's yelling because of what happened. So I figured I could just like get a free round if I just kind of go in and do some dumb stuff. And so that would have rung out if you
That's,
were not
yeah.
back turned.
Aha, that's why. The entire time I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I thought I was done. I thought it was over when that happened.
Yeah, if he
So, okay.
T2Bs you in your back turn, he cannot do the reverse ring out.
Oh, okay. So it is important to note, just to make sure you know that AMSA is minus 12, right?
Yes. And
Okay.
I was not dealing with it properly. In my mind, I was like, I should do something about that.
Yeah, exactly. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about before, where I had done so much AMSB and so much of like the new AMS 2B kind of stuff that it becomes difficult for people to remember that there are actually things that they can punish. And there are actually things that, again, it's the attention as a resource kind of thing all over again, where I haven't gone to this option all that much, and so suddenly I'm throwing it out there, and what's supposed to be unsafe doesn't end up being unsafe, which
Right.
is nice.
I think in that situation, what was on my mind was he can't do the dumb back turn move because he didn't have enough frames. That
Yeah.
was the only thing that was on my mind, not the fact that I could punish it.
Yeah, I have to get more used to dealing with Med-K stuff a lot better.
It depends on the character. I think 3A is a very good option.
Yeah.
You want a forward advancing tech crouch move to deal with Med-K. And 3A is really fantastic for that.
Nice stepping, by the
And
way.
thank you. I was so scared because I thought I should went back throw. I should have did a back throw, but I didn't
Yeah.
know if she's like moving and ducking that I just didn't even know.
Yeah, especially if I'm going through like AMS and all that kind of stuff, it can be very difficult to figure out when a quote unquote high is going to
Right.
be available. I believe
Right.
at this point, Ruben Thermidor was yelling at me to spend my meter, but it is important to note that it can be difficult to spend meter as Amy in a very typical way. And you
Yeah.
got so greedy there, you
Yep. And
greedy, greedy man.
I think I turned to you and I was like, "Yep, I deserve that."
Yeah, you definitely did. But yeah, at this point, I'm trying to find like a way to actually like use my meter effectively, and
Mhm.
I noticed that after 3B on block, you were respecting it every time. So I was like, let me just double down on this not frame advantage at all, yet still frame advantage kind of situation, and just go for a soul attack. So I've gone on record where I hate Amy's soul charge, and I hate Amy's soul charge activation because it's so counterintuitive to what you want to do. Amy's soul attack, I really love. I think
Yeah.
Amy's soul attack and the practical application of her soul attack is so great because you can combo it off of virtually anything, and you're right there. Like, you're right in
Yep.
my face. So I don't have to spend 3/4 of my soul charge just, corralling you into a situation where I can actually use it. Here, I can use my 4 AAA counter hit right away. And that's
Right.
exactly what I want.
And like here, I know there's a nasty mix up there.
Yeah.
So I just decided to soul charge out and not really deal with it at that time.
So this is where I start using low parry K. Even though it's not going to give me the lethal hit, I haven't used it yet, so it's something that I wanted to like give a try
Right.
to see what the option was going to be. As long as I am canceling through other parries, I was thinking hopefully it's going to pan out.
That made sense. I think I was like if I get hit by the mid, I die. So I can take the low. Um but at the end of the day I was like, well, I'm not going to guess right 100% of the time. I just want to if I'm going to guess, I want to take the guess that allows me to live. And I thought that taking the low was the guess that was going to allow me to live.
Yeah, and it did,
Yeah.
technically speaking.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I remember kind of learning as that round was going is that my ideas as to what I wanted to do made sense. It really kind of took me a long time to realize how patient and defensive you were going to be when I was in your face. And
Mhm.
so where people will try to mash immediately, I gave you a step ahead where I was like, okay, so he's going to try to block this and then he's going to mash. And you were like, I'm still going to block
Yep.
the second round, and then like so in that last game that we just had, I mashed the first round, mashed the second round, and then I did a mid pair. Like I delayed my reverse mix up like a third like cycle through my offensive pressure to try and
Right.
get more parries than I was getting before. That was kind of the idea of that last round for me.
Right. That makes sense. I think for me, the more you do and the more patient I am, until you throw at me, like if you throw me, you give me information, but I wanted to see what kind of parries and what kind of things you were going to do because
Hmm.
I felt like I needed information, right?
Yeah, I guess that makes
And
sense.
I don't really lose out for blocking. Like I don't like you were so charged. I don't really think you were gonna like 1B for BB me. I think you were just gonna like try to like make me want to press buttons. And so I like while blocking, I was just like, okay, I was just gonna look and just see if I could like mash somewhere. I wasn't really trying to. I don't really like trying to mash out versus Amy.
Yeah,
That's that
that
was
was a
I
little
noticed.
that was a little bit squirrely of me trying to do a 3B in that bad frame situation. But at this point, with this round, it didn't end up working out. But I was kind of noticing that there was so much defensive play, and so I wanted to
Mm,
go to such a high level of obnoxiousness where I was
mhm.
just like, okay, I have decided for at least this round, my option is going to be to mash 4A in every situation and just
Yeah,
constantly try to catch you, so, to the point where it's like, okay, I really need to crack his defensive shell and force him to feel like mashing is the way to go.
right. And I feel like as Yoshimitsu, I want to mash, but I the things that Yoshimitsu mashes are either I-10 or I-14, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're both counter hit confirmable, right? So I can either mash 3A, which is counter hit confirmable, or I can mash BBB, which is counter hit confirmable, right? Or I can mash AA, Brave Edge, if I have the meter, which is counter hit confirmable,
Right.
right? And so like I have to be defensive. That way, I'm not like I don't want to mash just to mash. If I'm going to mash, I want to have the presence of mind to be able to mash, but also to be able to counter hit confirm my mash as well, not just do it randomly. So I really need to understand your patterns and how you're thinking and what you're doing in order to mash effectively. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really important. Just it's not even just a me thing; it's an Amy thing. Just overall, is that if you want to ensure that a decently competent Amy is going to tear you apart, try to scrap with her. Try
Yep.
to mash as much as she is, because that's exactly so. I'm hitting you with these 4As and I'm hitting you with these 3As, but we both know that's not what I actually want to hit you with. I want to hit you
Exactly.
with a 2-2B. I want to hit you with a 1B. I want to get my red roses, and then my damage is, far outranging you, right? So the
Mm.
whole point of these moves is to frustrate you. And if you don't get frustrated, then essentially what happened in that round is what happens. Where, yeah, I hit you, I don't know, two, maybe three times for every time that you hit me, but you do more damage. So
Yep.
it's not going to mean as much.
Yep.
And I didn't really get any kind of roses. So even though that was a close round, it was actually a pretty devastating loss for me because I didn't get any of the roses that I was looking for, and I didn't get the round to kind of give me a cushion.
Right. I definitely think that makes a lot of sense because like I know and a lot of the thing which I remembered at the last second that you have a reversal edge cancel that
Yeah.
almost killed me.
Yeah.
I think what I try to do, especially in this matchup, is I know Amy's offense is good, but she still has to guess, right? She
Yeah.
still has to guess whether like, is it a good time to do 1B or not? Is it a good time to 3B? So a lot of times you'll see me like do random ducks and stuff just to like make you second guess on your mix up, right? That my whole goal is like if we're gonna scrap, if I do want to scrap, I want you to be so unsure of your decision that like I just want to make you scared of trying to mix me up. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a mentality that you see that you don't see from Amy's as much as I think that you should. Well, I guess that's just in terms of like my play style, but the way that I play Amy and the way that I play Soul Calibur 6 at this point is I am never unsure about the option that I'm choosing, in the
Hmm.
sense of I have decided that this is just what I am going to do, and I accept the game that I'm playing for what it is, and I'm just like, my opponent will simply have to outguess me in this situation in order to win. If they can do that, more power to them. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because if I'm playing that kind of way, there are two different styles that I run into the most in competitive play. It is the people who will ignore me saying, hey, you have to guess. And then there are people who are like, okay, well, I'm going to try to guess as much as you. And you have to play those against those two styles differently. If it's somebody who is ignoring the mix-up, then you have to lean so heavily on the BS kind of like small pokes and everything, and finally get them to like to the point where they're like frustrated, and then it completely falls apart for them. But then, in order to play against the people who want to guess as much as you have to immediately be mixing it up. You can't be that obnoxious. And so, this is one of the things that I always talk about, Amy, is that how you play against, how you as an Amy player play against other players is customized so heavily depending on how they've decided to work on that matchup that it can be tough. If you play against somebody like they know how to play against Amy, but they don't, you're going to get destroyed.
Right.
Like the moves you're going to choose, you're going to be so much more passive, and they're just going to be like, okay, well, I hit harder than this, so I guess I can just do this. And then it'll take me a few rounds, and I'll say like, oh, he doesn't know how to deal with the situation literally at all. So I can just I can just put my entire body weight on this one possible situation, and I'll just win the day because the situation is too good.
Right, and I think kind of going doubling down on what you said, the rounds where you were super obnoxious were the rounds where you lost, right?
Yeah.
It was just like, all right, I'm just going to be content. Okay, he's kind of like taking more advantage that he actually has, so I can kind of mash you and stuff like that.
Yeah, this is actually kind of this is one of the situations that happens with Yoshimitsu a lot. After I get picked up off of the ground in that situation, it's actually a situation where I never don't press buttons, like right here. It's basically I have way too many possible situations or options to beat out whatever Yoshimitsu wants to do in that situation. So there's never a point where I respect this Oki situation.
So yes, that's the correct option, and I think it's even more so with Amy because she's I-10 vertical.
Exactly.
Now in this patch, if you have like I-12 AA and stuff like that, Yoshi just lethal hits you with flash in this situation now because I think the situation between -4 and -6, and that's like the prime flash auto GI like window is. So if you are going to mash something, you either mash your I-12 kick or you mash your vertical here. Because that way flash doesn't beat because a lot of people like will 2A here because they're like, oh, Yoshi's like -6, I can press here, or I can AA because Yoshi's -6, but now he has the option to beat that. So you mashing 6B there was actually probably the most optimal thing you can do because I don't think I can 2A. If I'm -6, I don't think I can 2A under D.
Yeah, and if you try to do something like a high or something that is going to potentially try to beat like 6BB, I also gigantically have the threat, especially now that I'm in Soul Charge, I have the threat of 4AA to tech crouch under something, and that's going to be a counter hit, and that's pretty bad news. And if I think that like the parry is going to be coming, I wasn't thinking about the flash, but let's say I was, then I can just have my own parries, and then me whiffing a parry against you whiffing a parry means that I win. So
not if I brave edge it.
Oh, I guess that's true.
Because I think here, so that was the first time that situation ever happened in, I think, all of our games combined, even casual. I actually tried to sidestep there, but the 6B stopped my step because I was so negative.
Yeah, it's a classic SE4 Amy kind of situation then.
Yeah.
So here I really don't want to use my bar, but then I got hit by that throw. Yeah, I was very irritated with that loss.
Yeah, I can tell because I felt like once I front grabbed you, I felt confident I could take it because I felt like you were trying to like be super conservative on defense.
Yeah, I was just really trying to guess right on a particular situation and trying to make it so that like, okay, well, if I guess correctly about one of these situations, one of these lows specifically, then I can CE punish for the win. And so that's what I was trying to do, and perhaps I got a little bit too tunnel visioned on that kind of situation.
I also think in a situation, instead of trying to guess right with your blocks, you should just move, right? Because it's a lot more threatening. Yoshi's a lot more threatening when you stand still.
Yeah, that's true.
How does Yoshimitsu like stop you how does Yoshimitsu kill you for moving, right? That was a good mid-parry.
Yeah, it's something that, again, there were so many situations where I was going for low parries, and I always think about low parries whenever Yoshi is crouching, that eventually I was finally able to get used to the idea of, this was definitely a situation where I felt that you had smelled blood in the water, you're about to win this this game, and so I'm thinking now I can actually try and, like, counteract that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that made sense. And then I blocked that. You
Yeah.
should blame Master CJ for that, because that's why I blocked that. So blame him.
Yeah. Oh, I blame
he
Master
doesn't-
CJ for a variety of different things.
That's
Yeah.
fair. But I was like, okay. But it was interesting that I got the punish, because I actually labbed that before the tournament, because I know that if I do it too early, my Wild Rising A actually goes over
Yeah.
the mid parry, or is that low parry K?
Low parry K, yeah.
It goes over the low parry K.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to make sure that was it, because I don't think I win any other way.
Yeah, and to be honest, even though I lost the game because of that block, I was actually totally fine with the fact that that low block happened, because the kick didn't get blocked the first time that I did it in one of the previous games, and this time it did get blocked, and there's only one game left, so immediately I'm thinking like, okay, in that situation, I have low parry A absolutely guaranteed.
Right,
Like,
I think that was
definitely
actually
going to happen.
That was actually the third time it happened. You hit me the first two, and that was the third
Oh,
time
okay,
you did it,
yeah.
and then I blocked it finally the third time.
So I was really happy with the fact that, like, we were in the last game, so it's like, you don't have enough time to adapt to this. I'm just going to keep this in my pocket.
Right.
And I like how I'm saying that, and I'm pretty sure I never got an opportunity to this situation. but it was something where it's just like, okay, the second that I see that somebody is looking for the low parry K, especially in those kinds of situations, I will use the low parry A at the very end, because they're really not going to be fully prepared for it.
Right. Yeah, I don't think I figured you didn't have the balls to low parry A at the wall, because I knew you had the lethal hit on deck, but I figured you just didn't want to do it there.
Yeah. So this is where I'm like trying to throw out like moves that I hadn't been using before, and this is something that I'm just simply too itchy to do a back turn B plus K whenever I have an opportunity to. This is a weakness that I, along with a variety of different naming players, have. It's a really good move, but no move is good when the opponent knows it's coming.
Right, and I think that was the second time you actually attempted that, and it whiffed, or
Yeah.
I tied you out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then this was a situation that had happened before, where I know that you're essentially plus on whiff in this situation, but any and every time that Yoshimitsu players get this kind of situation, they always go for a 2A, so
Right.
I end up getting the mid parry. And then I was very frustrated because I got the 2A plus B rather than the full crouch A plus B, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, because that's a tech trap situation. I definitely didn't I tech there? I think I tech there.
Yeah. Well, it's a tech trap, but then also, like, it was a guaranteed rose, and I
Right.
lost out on the rose, and that's about as big of a deal as you can get. Not to mention, if my opponent knows that, then I don't want to reveal that, like, my execution is leaving me, because I don't really want that to be part of the story, you know what I mean?
Right.
God, I didn't break any throws, did I?
Well, no, because I only there's a third time you back to me with K, but I only 4-3 because I didn't have any reason to change.
Yeah, and it's the better one, like you talked about.
Yeah, that was the most on purpose death copter I've ever had in my life.
Yeah,
No,
I figured it was a pretty solid choice. Yeah.
6A plus B, I messed it up.
I remember getting really frustrated with the 6AA like natural combo tech trap position, because I believe that was either the second or the third time that I had pulled it off, and you guessed correctly all three times. And I was like, man, oh man, like, that is just not panning out, and I didn't break that grab either.
Yeah, that was a good. I think you 2-2B.
Yes.
But okay.
Yeah. Jump Bs and 2Bs do not exist for Amy players. I can count on one hand the amount of times that I've tried to do a Jump B. Now, that being said, Jump B... It's funny because in between season 1 and season 2, they did buff Amy Jump B. Yeah, it gave him more frame advantage, so you can actually get, like, if you ever read, you can actually get a 4BB after a Jump B.
That's actually insane.
It was something that was like a running joke with Sandman and me, because you know, the only time that you see Amy players do Jump B is when they were trying to do a 2-2B, and we would be like, watch, instead of actually fixing the input system, they're just gonna buff Amy Jump B, and that's exactly what they did.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I was lucky that the second rose that the rose didn't hit me, but I remember you mentioning that Yoshimitsu is like short enough to where that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's so difficult to kind of tell, and unfortunately, it's such a big difference in terms of frames whether you block the rose or not, and so I kind of just go all out, and just assume that the rose is going to hit. Especially against people who might feel a little bit more timid, because maybe they won't even notice that there's a lot of frame disadvantage there. So, and I didn't feel like I was risking all that much, so.
Right.
You
And
greedy human
well,
being.
okay, so here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't matter to me because if you look at, I don't know if you noticed this, but there's a lot of rounds where uh you would start and I would have no meter and you have like 2 bars, or
Yeah.
you'd have a bar and have no meter, right?
Yeah.
So regardless of whether I hit you or not, what I want is the meter,
Right.
right? And so if you look here, like I'm at a like you're reversal edge, so I think you're gonna get a little bit meter advantage. But I had meter advantage for a while, and
Right.
and that
Exactly.
allows me to do stuff like this, right?
Hmm.
Because like when Yoshimitsu has meter, I don't care whether you have roses or not, because now I have the damage to scrap it, right?
I didn't
And
really
like,
deal with this situation all that well either, and for some reason I'm
well,
getting hit by that low.
okay. So if you want to pause for a second, that doesn't hit grounded. It just does no damage on grounded opponents,
Hmm.
which a lot of people don't know that. So you staying grounded there was actually very smart, right? So if Yoshimitsu ever does soul attack or puts you in a soul charge situation, a lot of the times what you should do is just stay on the ground, because it forces Yoshi to do either 3B, which if you since you're playing Amy as a female character, you can roll to the left and make the 3B mess up, or it forces Yoshi to do like a 2B hold or a 2B just to be like, hey, I need you to wake up and do something, right? So it's not that you didn't deal with it well. I don't think you realized that you dealt with it better than. I think you didn't realize that you dealt with it well. You just thought that the answer was wrong, when in reality it was actually a good response.
Yeah, staying on the ground in that situation was definitely what I wanted, and I knew that it was a good option. But I was still a little bit perturbed by the fact that when I got up, I still got hit by the low afterwards, like the horizontal low. And I feel like a lot of stuff that happened in this set, I feel like if I were to replay it, it would have been significantly better punishes and attempts to punish and block some of the lows that were just not panning out very well.
Right.
And speaking of not panning out very well, I think you had blocked all the 3Bs in that round, and then I went for the 1B, and then it didn't work.
Yeah, I think when I'm in soul charge, I definitely want the 1B. You didn't use your meter. But I'm looking for a sidestep duck because it does like while rising A, brave edge, in the dragonfly B, it does like almost 100 damage. So I'm looking for that
Yeah.
specifically.
In this situation, I got pretty lucky. This was a situation that I felt really bad until I got the red rose, and then I felt so that's like 100% like a force block kind of situation. I'm trying to go for AMS grabs because in that kind of situation, when I have soul charge, those kinds of wake ups, you are one of the very few players that will stay on the ground, which is an incredibly risky thing because it means AMS A plus B is just gonna win me the whole game at this point.
Right.
So it's not really something that I'm used to, of people actually like, again, kind of what I was talking about, where you are accepting that this is the mix-up instead of ignoring the mix-up and then trying to beat me on the AMS grab mix-up. You're just thinking, okay, well, this is an entire mix-up the entire time. And so I remember thinking to myself, like if I had realized that we were this comfortable with the mix-up situation being what it is, I would have panned out differently.
Right. And I think you wanted the 2-2B there, but you got something else.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I was going for stuff that was just very small because I wanted
Right.
situations like this to happen.
And I think that was a good so if you pause for a second, there's a few things. I think that was a good not re-GI by you, because I think every other time you had re-GI'd. I think the time before this you hadn't re-GI'd. And so at 6A plus B you got free damage, but here I thought you were going to re-GI because it was the last part of the game. So that was good composure on your part, because I was like, man, he's obviously gonna like do something because it's like the game's almost over. And then I did the Dragonfly A there because I thought that, oh my gosh, it's almost over. And I've done Dragonfly K like 70,000 times.
Right.
I think that he's gonna duck here. And then the one thing that you also weren't dealing with is Raw Rising A Brave Edge on block.
Yes, that's true.
You can mid parry the B part, and you can step it, and you can GI it. You can literally do whatever you want.
Yeah, chiefly I wanted mid parry it, but yeah, it was not something. In fact, the first time that we played against each other, after that had finished, Woes had come up to me and told me that was a situation where, and he said that like, yeah, it's kind of awkward when you're first looking at it if you haven't practiced it, but then if you go into training mode and you figure it out, you'll have it down in just like a handful of minutes, and then you'll never have to worry about it again. So there's definitely a handful of things with Yoshimitsu where I'm just simply not punishing properly. Something that I think was coming up a lot in this set. But to kind of go back to what you were talking about when it came to why I didn't read GI and stuff, you can actually see this against my my winners finals match at ECT against Linkors, where because I'm so mashy, I try to when I have made my opponent feel like when we're both aware that this is the end, this is potentially the end of the game. You're going to beat me if you guess correctly in this situation. So surely Jay is going to mash because in situations that are significantly less important, he will always mash. And so what I was trying to do was like, what I'll do is clamp down so hard to the point where like it's the longest I've blocked in the entire set. And that way, when the 3A does come, it's going to be so random and awkward and weird that there's no way it's going to get blocked.
Right. I don't think I was thinking about that. I think I was thinking about just like prior stuff as well. Like the first game you lost was a situation that was like that as well.
Yeah.
It was a different situation, but in the same kind of sense, it's
Same
kind of
vein,
in a back,
yeah.
like a GI to win or lose the game. And I think here I thought that like, I guess I thought that like it would take like a third time for that to happen, but it was only like but you adapted on the second time,
Yeah.
which is very good on your part. Very good job.
It's it's something where a handful of things where the second that I'm noticing that there's something that's going on with my opponent, I will instead of waiting for like conditioning to happen, I'll just flip like immediately.
Right.
Just to see if it ends up happening. So I activate Soul Charge here because it's the last game, and I'm going to potentially get another bar pretty soon anyway, and I don't want you to have like the potential BBB lethal hit.
Right.
But unfortunately, the Soul Charge ends up doing tantamounts of work. So again, here, like it was like one of the very, very, very few times that I end up blocking that kick, and I didn't even punish at all. So
Right.
yeah, definitely something that I have to get more used to.
I actually hate going into rounds with 2 bars, especially as Yoshimitsu.
Yeah.
Because I hate using them. And like here, I was like, okay, this should be over, right? This should be over, right? I didn't think the RI here because I thought that it was too risky. And then you here, I think. So if you pause it real quick, there you did fine. Making the med K whiff because I was definitely like, oh my gosh, here's the game. But here, so there you have 2 options, right? There you can either step that or you can RI that.
I think stepping was definitely the way to go, but I felt. Again, it was unfamiliarity that was going on, and I felt uncomfortable with the idea that I might get Soul Calibered, where I do step, but it doesn't matter, and I get hit anyway.
Right.
And so I just felt like, this is the end of his Soul Charge, it's going to dissipate now, so why don't I just continue to clamp down like I did in the last round, and try to win it out in a more favorable situation. Rather than, like, I guess I was just trying to keep Soul Calibur random hitboxes from cheesing me out.
It makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely something, again, that I had to get used to stepping. Here, again, that's not even really like a punish. I could have done so much better there.
Right. And here you stop my mash, and then here is where...
This is where it all fell apart.
Well, to me, like, it makes sense. I think so the ground had worked before, right? And I think you had stopped me from rolling, or you killed me for rolling like quite a few times within, I think to win the last round, you kind of killed me for rolling.
Yeah.
And then here it was like, okay, well, you're just going to have to guess right. Like, I just, like, it's either like you guess right or not. Like, to me, I'm not like, oh my gosh, like, I'm not thinking like, oh my gosh, what did he do before? I'm just like, here, you're going to have to guess right or not. And I've been comfortable rolling on the ground. And so I just did what I was comfortable with.
Yeah, again, it's something that I keep going back to. There is a major difference between people who will ignore the mix-up when playing against Amy, and people who accept the fact that that Amy layers situation after situation of mix-ups. So as long as you treat everything as a mix-up, you could get blown up, or this could happen, and you end up it ends up panning out relatively well. Now, one of the reasons why, so that ends up, I'm gonna guess, somewhere between 8 and 9 trillion forward grabs that I don't end up breaking. So that's unfortunate, but it's also important to note that I'm okay with the fact that I was wrong about the AMS grab, again, because AMS grabs recover quicker than other times before. The thing that I am disappointed in myself with is the fact that the last time the situation happened was at one of the situations that happened very in the beginning of the set, where I whiffed a grab while you were on the ground, you got up, I did the traditional mid-parry to beat out the potential mash, and you didn't do anything and you won the round. Here, you rolled, I whiffed the grab again, you got up and you didn't do anything the same as you did before. And so what I should have done was just been, I finally should have not clamped down and been defensive, and I should have just been like, whiff grab, or he's on the ground, I'm just gonna like mash 4AA or something. I feel
Yeah,
like if I had mashed it out there, it would have been a better choice.
I think I think would have been good was just to grab again, right? Because like if I'm gonna sit there and stand up, then I think that's kind of how you beat that, right? Because then it's not necessarily you 4AA me and then I might live or I might die. I mean, yeah, it's the same thing with grabbing, but the likelihood of me ducking there, I guess likelihood of me ducking there is low. So the 4AA or the grab is definitely good.
Yeah.
But I definitely think the 4AA gives me space. While the grab break does give me space, I think it's definitely scarier because it's like, oh shoot, he grabbed. Like,
Yeah, that
what?
would have been. I don't know if I would have ever thought about that option at the end of a tournament set, but it's also the fact that, as you can probably tell, I don't actually like using Amy's normal grabs. I only use the AMS grabs, and the reason why I didn't go for I wasn't really in range for like a regular grab. I was feeling a little bit worried about the grab range in that situation, but I
Mm,
also was still fearing that you were going to get up and mash when I shouldn't have.
right.
If that makes sense, I think that's the reason why I stayed more patient. It's really tough when you're a guy who wants to stay patient, but you also suck at defense. So you end up just being like a training dummy who's just standing there. It's something that I have always had a tough time with, and I'm not sure how to get better at it. But I can keep trying.
Right. I think definitely in this matchup, it was more so you didn't really like to move. Like when you
Yeah.
were on defense, you were just like, all right, this is the wall. It's going to be here, and then I like poke you like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, like
Uh
that
huh.
kind of like thing. But I think when it comes to like Yoshi in general, like I think one of the things that I tend to do is when I play Yoshi, and I think one of the things that people are confused about is when I play Yoshi, I backstep a lot,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm always like running away, and they're like, wait, but you're playing Yoshimitsu. Why are you running away? And like it's like, well, I mean, just because I'm playing a character that needs to go in doesn't mean that I can't space
Right.
with punch,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when it comes, especially like anti Yoshi, is just like I have a hard time dealing with you backstepping, and so in certain situations, like here, you're backwards to the wall, so it's like not as great of an option.
Right.
But in general, like if there's ever a time where you're like calling out mental frame advantage, sometimes you don't have to call it out with uh a block or a button, you can just call it out with movement, like backwards movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that not only does that give you the regain the not only does it allow you to regain neutral, especially if you have red rows, it puts you in a comfort zone of where like, okay, haha, you have to chase me again.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It's difficult. It's so tempting because unlike most other characters, Amy using a button in those kinds of situations is almost always the most optimal answer, if only because you had to guess correctly as to which button you're supposed to use,
Right.
but she has a button for everything where there's not a lot of characters who have that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the option in my head is always which button am I going to use? The concept of the question of should I use a button? Just it never comes up for me. It's just always like if I wanted to not press a button, I'd pick a different character.
Right. But I mean, at this point, it's more so like I want to be at her for Amy. It's like I want to be at a range where I can press buttons and Yoshi can't.
Yeah, yeah,
And so, like, once you hit that range, and you can be like, all right, time to pick my button because Yoshi can't. Yoshi has to block. But like at this range, it's just like, all right, well, you have to guess, and like it's hard to block full crouch 3K on PS4,
mm-hmm.
and then if you commit to that, he's got a plus on block mid that you just have to deal with. So
Yeah.
it's really sometimes it's just better to backstep because they nerfed their full crouch 3K range, so you just run away.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that I can. So, really, just a better familiarization with your character, I think, is going to be important for me. Getting
Mm,
used to getting the optimal punishes and accepting certain lows, but it's not just the character stuff. It's also accepting how you've decided to play the matchup as a player,
mm,
where you are more prepared for. This is just the ever evolving meta of anti Amy that I'm trying to get used to, because again,
mm.
you have to play so customized depending on how your opponent's going to play when you're playing Amy that however much information and understanding they have of the character should radically change how you end up playing. I'm not saying that's like a weakness of hers, because she can play either way very strongly. It's just the matter of figuring out which one it is. Either the opponent knows nothing or they know a lot. And so I have to get used to who is prepared for the matchup and who is prepared to take these guesses more so than other people.
Right. I'm the kind of person where I'm like, prove it to me.
Yeah.
It's just like, prove it to me. Like, if you're gonna want to be, okay, prove it. That's so. I don't know if that fits into your category. Like, I guess I know like matchups really, really well, actually, but I prefer to play you as a player.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I can care less that, like, I mean, in some situations the matchup kind of is annoying, and sometimes there's just players that I just can't read. Right. So then I'm like,
Right.
oh, guess now I have to play the matchup. But like most of the time, if it's like a bad matchup and if I'm good at reading you as a person, then I can care less, because not to say the matchup goes out the window, because it doesn't, but like certain matchup things are exploited and certain matchup things are highlighted and others are put away, when in reality, some of the good parts of the matchups are put away for the opponent, and the bad parts of the matchups are highlighted for them. And for me, because I'm playing you, you as a person, the good things for me and my character, who requires you to play the person, is highlighted rather than the matchup. That makes sense. That made any sense.
I think playing against the player rather than the character, more often than not, especially once you get to this level, is the most important thing that you can have. I would actually argue that that is more important. Both are important, but I would argue that that is more important than knowing the character matchup, because the character can only be as powerful as the person who's playing it. And right. The player is somebody who is significantly more malleable and flexible in his attention and his stamina and everything such as. So I think that it's a much better skill to be able to play against the player and recognize those pressure points for frustration and, deviating attention away from what the opponent wants to do and start playing your game as opposed to playing their game. That's the best way that I can explain it
exactly.
At the moment.
That was better than me.
Yeah, and it is important to note that in case you guys can see on the screen, the PS4 says 12:20 a.m. This was not a resetted PS4. It was actually like 12:20 a.m. when the set was being played. It was one of the later. It's one of the later sets I think I've played in recent history for sure. So I'm surprised I was able to keep it as close as it was.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a good set. Like legit, if you flipped a coin, and like you did one or two things differently, you could have won. It could have easily went either way.
Yeah, I feel like that's how a lot of tournament sets go. I mean, if you take somebody at this point, when you get to a certain level, somebody who got 5th in a large tournament versus somebody who won the tournament, in certain contexts, you can say, like, wow, the difference between 5th and 1st could have been like three or four guess rights, and that's it.
Exactly.
That's all it takes. So, it's very easy to kind of put oneself down because you ended up not winning this set. But it is important to note that the difference between winning and losing, especially in a game like this that has so many mix-ups and so much very swingy kind of damage, the margin of winning and losing, even losing early or winning the whole way, is very small.
Right. And I think, kind of going back to what you said, as a loser having advantage going into these kind of sets.
Yeah.
Technically, you won the normal tournament set. You won the first two.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like the adaptation wasn't there and the adaptation wasn't made. Like, it was there. It was just like, and like it was last round, last game, both in guts. So it's like, literally, like, I don't know, literally, like, flip a coin, bam.
Yeah, this is one of the better sets that I think I've been a part of in SE6 so far. It's a very good lesson in a lot of different things, in a lot of mental stamina, of essentially a conversation that's happening through the match that is ever evolving, and it's something that not a lot of players look to, and it's kind of something that's very difficult. It's one of the reasons why I started this video series, is kind of describing why good players are doing what they're doing.
Hmm.
Because you can't really put that on paper. It's very difficult to put that down in an analytical, mathematical way. It's something that you get a feel for it when you're looking for it, and when you couple that with a large amount of experience. At least that's how
Right.
I feel like you get those kinds of conditioning skills.
Right. No, I agree. Like conditioning doesn't come in training, but it comes from experiencing conversations.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to play people and have to like understand things and learn how people apply different tools. Because like you said, there's a couple situations where like you're like most Yoshimitsus like to do this. Well, it's like I'm a Yoshimitsu player,
Yeah.
so like obviously that was the information you had, but like I did something different, right? I use a
Mm-hmm.
tool differently than like let's say Lolo does, or, you know. And like I was coming in like, okay, Master uses this, and like you use the tool differently. It's like, okay, well, he uses this tool like this, so now I have to adjust and understand what he's trying to say to me in order to kind of combat that.
Is Master CJ somebody that you have a lot of experience against?
Nah, yes, actually, I think when there was Summer Jam when I played Sandman, and this was the first time I think this was the first time my rap, not the first time, but the second time my rap was highlighted. He picked Amy.
Right.
I played Amy versus Raph, and I think Master G like bodied the mess out of me uh in that matchup. And then I know that Sandman's plethora of characters is as well at the time was as well Siegfried and
And
Amy,
Amy, yeah.
and I knew that he thought that Aswell is like really good and can win any matchup, and I was like, that makes sense. But I felt like that he had a particular weakness to Raphael, the character,
Mm-hmm.
and so when he picked Amy during that set, and I think the second he actually picked Amy versus me during Summer Jam and NEC,
Yeah,
and
the
I think
NEC one is definitely the one that I remember, and it's really not easy to win against Amy when you're playing Raphael. I think that's one of Raphael's harder matchups.
yeah, I think it is this hard matchup. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that my Raph versus Amy experience is way more than his Amy versus Raph experience
Mm.
because there's not a lot of Raphs in the United States that you can
There's
just
not a
play.
lot of there's not a lot of refs. Full stop.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's very true,
Yeah.
and that was because it's Matt CJ, so I have him
Yeah.
to thank for that. So
All right. So thanks to Master CJ for making me lose a tournament set against Boom. So that was cool, I guess. But yeah, he won't watch this. So
yeah, you
I'll make
never
sure
know.
that he can't see it
That's fair. That's fair. I'll
somehow.
tell him to watch
I'm
anyway.
sure
Though.
I'm sure I can ban individual people from YouTube channels, right?
Uh, well, I mean, you
If
never know
there
until you
isn't,
try,
I'll
right?
I'll certainly find a way.
Right.
But Boom, thanks very much for helping me out for doing commentary and analysis on our set from Xanadu.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Great. These are the kinds of conversations that I think are very important. If you can stick around long enough to, understand what these kinds of conversations entail, this is how I learn. And so I imagine I am not that much different from other people. So I'm happy that you were here, and thanks to everybody who ended up watching the whole way through. And I'll see you guys next time. Okay? Thanks very much.